Hello everyone, how's it going? Billy Ballgame here, back with another video. On this channel, I'm just a dude who loves to talk about baseball cards, and I'm going to talk about some baseball cards today. You all that have watched my recent videos know that I've been buying a lot of wax boxes and complete sets and stuff like that here recently. So I wanted to talk about that today, not necessarily a recap of what I picked up, but kind of just thoughts on it. Really, is it worth it to buy complete sets or wax boxes if you're looking for cards to grade? And so I kind of wanted to dive into that. Of course, initially your first reaction is going to be, well, no, it's not, Billy. We all know that it is not worth buying packs or buying sets and boxes if you want to send cards into grade, especially stuff from the junk wax era. I don't think that it's necessarily that clear cut, and that's why I wanted to discuss it today. But I also wanted to give a shout out to a couple channels. My buddy Greg from Midlife Cards is celebrating his 2-year YouTube anniversary next week. And my buddy Chris from Missouri just celebrated his yesterday. So I wanted to give a shout out to those guys. Just what awesome dudes they are in the hobby and in the YouTube community, and just tremendous dudes that I am happy to consider friends. And then also, I'm getting back to my roots in today's video. For those of you that have been around for a while, you remember that I started my channel as STL Puckhead, and I changed it a little over a year ago. And hockey season is in full swing, so I figured I'd throw on my hockey jersey today. And I'm downstairs in my card room, as you can see, and it's really cold down here. So I figured having a hockey jersey on wouldn't, maybe I wouldn't be shivering while I was making the video. So let's dive into it. So I wrote some numbers down of some pops for some of these cards, and if I can remember everything I bought recently, I bought a 90-91 Upper Deck hockey box. I bought a 1990 Bowman baseball box and a 1990 Bowman complete set here recently. I have bought 2 boxes of 1990 Score, looking for the Bo Jackson card. I believe it's number 697, the Bo card, where he's, football pads and baseball bat. I bought a box of 1991 Upper Deck Baseball, trying to pull the Michael Jordan SP1. And I bought a box of 1989 Donruss, of course, looking for Ken Griffey Jr. cards. Like, I don't have enough of the 89 Donruss Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. So I bought a bunch, and that was 2 different trips to 2 different antique stores where I picked all that stuff up. Now, I don't buy boxes and sets necessarily to pull, specifically looking for cards to grade. Now, I rip junk wax boxes and buy junk wax sets because it's nostalgic to me. I enjoy those cards. It's what I grew up with, and I like ripping packs. And to me, if I'm going to rip packs, like, I would rather it be something that's got some nostalgia to me, maybe from the junk wax era or slightly before, then go out. I would rather do that than go out and buy a bunch of modern stuff and rip a bunch of packs, hoping to pull, shiny stuff of players that I don't necessarily have the same emotions tied to as I did when I grew up. And I still watch modern baseball. There's still a lot of newer players that I like, and I've named them, Vladdy Guerrero, Jose Ramirez, Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge, Ohtani. So I enjoy some of these guys. But if I'm going to spend money to rip packs, like, in the junk wax stuff, you know more than likely you're going to get what you're looking for out of a box, and you're not going to have to hope you get some numbered parallel. And so again, that's why I enjoy ripping junk wax boxes. It fills the itch for me to rip packs. And then again, these are nostalgic cards to me. A lot of them I had growing up, and then either no longer have because I probably sold them in high school. My 1990 Bowman cards, for an example. And a lot of them I, still have from when I was in high school. So I wanted to talk about today why, for the most part, I don't think it's worth it to rip boxes and complete sets of this stuff if you're only looking for cards to grade. So again, if I find cards to grade out of these boxes that I buy for $20, $40 or whatever, like that's great. Like that's awesome to me. A lot of the stuff back here that I want to get graded came out of boxes, came out of sets. But I've ripped a whole lot of that stuff to get these cards that I want to send in for grading if they're from the junk wax era. So generally my thought is, I have a few different thoughts, but I guess really the underlying theme to the whole video is, in my opinion, if there's a certain card that you want, it's better off to just go out and buy that card a couple different ways. You can buy it already graded. If you want to pay 10 tax, then pay 10 tax. If you want to buy a 9, then buy a 9. And most of the time, that's what I do. You've already got the card. It's already graded. You know what the card is for the most part. Or you can go on eBay or shows and buy really nice raw examples of those cards, especially at shows. Like you can review them and look at them and give your best estimate on what the grade's going to be. And a lot of this stuff, if you want to grade it, like you can find in bargain boxes probably for $1 or less for a lot of this stuff at shows. So really for me, it makes more sense to just go out and buy the cards, probably more than likely already graded, because for a lot of this stuff, if it's a 9, they're going to be super cheap. I mean, they were way overproduced. But I still buy these boxes and rip into these sets because I enjoy breaking boxes and ripping sets. It's not just about getting cards that are worth grading for me, even though that does play a part. Like I talked about the 1990 score and how I wanted to pull a Bo Jackson out of a pack that was worth grading in a 9, even though I already have one graded in an SGC 9. And by the way, that Bo Jackson black and white card looks great, in my opinion, in an SGC slab. So the 1990 Bowman box, like I've ripped the whole thing, and it was a really disappointing box. And that's really the reason why I ended up buying the complete set, is because that way at least I will have all of the cards, because I didn't get Frank Thomas, I didn't get King Griffey Jr., a bunch of the other cards out of that box. So I figured, well, I'll just go ahead and buy a set. I'll pay $20 for it, and then at least I know I have them. The rest of the boxes were good. Like I'll tell you, I got 2 of the Bo Jackson cards out of the score box I bought from the latest trip, the most recent trip to the antique store, the one out toward Kansas City. I pulled 2 of the Bo cards out of that box. I pulled 1 out of the other box from the other antique store, along with a few of the regular Frank Thomas rookies, a bunch of King Griffey Juniors. Like I already have, the regular 1990 score King Griffey Jr. graded. All the cards that I know of were in the 1990 Bowman set, and the 1991 Upper Deck box was really good too. And I will tell you now, I did pull a Jordan, the SP1, and that's really why I'm doing this video. And the 89 Donruss box, I pulled 2 King Griffey Jr. rookies out of it. One I already showed. I couldn't find the specific ones that I pulled out of that box, but one I already showed that I think is probably going to grade as a 9. And I have one in a 9. So I don't know if I'm going to grade these cards, or maybe if at some point I'll just sell them raw at shows or what for the King Griffey Jr. And I pulled some cards that I absolutely believe out of these boxes. I can never be 100%. None of us can ever be 100% when it comes to grading, right? But I'm about 87.3%. That's a very specific number that I just made up completely. I'm about 87.3% certain that one specific card that I know of is going to grade a 10. Like I'm pretty certain. Overall, this Donruss box was extremely clean as long as the cards were centered. The 90 score boxes, that was a different story. And I'm going to show you some of the cards that I'm talking about and why, to me, especially 1990 score, if you're looking for cards to grade, buy the complete set. If you want a Bo Jackson card that you can grade, buy a complete set. And then for the most part, all you have to worry about is whether or not it's centered. And there's a certain set that they come out of to where it's worth grading. And I believe they're the ones on the end with the red and white oval. And I don't remember what the designator is on that box, but that's the box to where the Bo Jackson isn't right up against the styrofoam, I believe, and that styrofoam can damage the card. The one I have graded in a 9 came out of one of those sets. So I'm gonna flip this camera around and give you a better view of some of these cards that I have pulled out that I wanted to talk to you about and explain to you why, especially with certain boxes from the junk wax era, it doesn't make sense to rip them if you're just looking for cards to grade. Again, 1990 score is one of them. You could probably put 1989 Donruss in that as well, because a lot of the corners are bad, a lot of them are off-centered, and this is stuff everybody knows. Like I'm not teaching you all anything different, but I just found some things curious out of these boxes that I wanted to talk to you all about. So hang with me. I'll flip the camera around and I'll be right back with you. All right, I'm back with you. So the card that I wanted to show you first is one that I'm pretty certain will grade a 10. And unfortunately, it's not a King Griffey Jr. or even a Randy Johnson for that matter. But this is an example to me of what a Donruss, a 1989 Donruss looks like in a 10. And this one may not even be a 10 because it's got, can't tell if that's a little fuzz on the corners, but this is the Rickey Henderson, and I'm not at the point in my collection where I'm ready to start grading 89 Donruss Rickey Hendersons, but there were lots of cards like this that were this clean that came out of this box. And almost always they have some kind of chipping along the edges or white in the corner, and that's got a little fuzz up there too. So that's why I said I'm 83.7% certain that this would grade a 10. But if you think about it, in all reality, I don't know what the pop count is on this card. Probably not really high because this isn't a card that would have a lot of demand for grading. But if I can get that to focus, you can really see the fuzz on that back corner. And it's not like it's dinged, it's just where it didn't get cut clean. If I can get this thing to focus. Sorry about that. There we go. So you can see it's just, it didn't get cut clean. So there's a little bit of extra paper right there is what it looks like to me. So in all reality, like this is probably one of the best cards I've ever seen come out of a 1989 Donruss box. And in all reality, this one is probably a 9. I could get lucky and get a 9.5 from SGC, but more than likely, That card is probably a 9. Now, the biggest reason why I decided I wanted to shoot this video is because I was looking for the bow nose card. This one, everybody knows the back, right? And again, I pulled 3 of these out of these 2 boxes. Now, this one, as you can see, is off center, left to right. But overall, it looks pretty good at first blush. But then if I can get the light to hit on it the right way, and for some reason, every Bo Jackson card was this way that I pulled out of these 3 boxes. And I'm not going to get it to show up on here, but right in here, there's an indentation from the score trivia piece on the surface of the card, and it actually comes back through the back side. You can see it. I'm not going to get it to show up on here, but there's no way that this card will, you might be able to see it right there. You can see a line. It looks like a print line on my phone, like the light is on the phone or on the print line right there. And that's from the score trivia piece. Now, for some reason, the 3 packs that I pulled that card out of, that card was in the very middle of the pack, and the trivia piece was right up against it. Every other pack that I ripped, and I don't know if this was just coincidence or what, every other pack that I ripped that didn't have one of the Bo Jackson cards in it, the score trivia piece was like the 2nd or 3rd card into the pack. So unfortunately, every single Bo Jackson card was up against that trivia piece, and it got the line right here on the surface from the packs being packed so tight together in the boxes, and the boxes setting for so long. So if I were looking for this card, I would buy a graded example. You can buy a 10, a PSA 10 for $212. You can buy a 9 for $35. And so the numbers on this card, because we know grading is tough, right? We know it's hard to get 10s. Like, sometimes you get a 10 that you think is very deserving of a 10, and then you get it back and you get a 9.5 or a 9. At least with SGC. With PSA, you'd probably get 9s. So the numbers on that Bo Jackson card is it's got a total 10 pop with PSA of 3,791. And that's out of 20,552 total graded. So it's got an 18% gem rate with PSA. And again, like I said, you can buy a 10 for $212, or you can buy a 9, a PSA 9 for $35. And of course, an SGC would be even cheaper in a 9. And this card, like I said, looks great in an SGC tux, in my opinion. So you might be able to get one worth grading. Like I said, I bought a complete set and got a 9. But in all reality, if you're buying boxes, like, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to have some type of issue to where a lot of the times they're not even going to grade as a 10. That's why the pop counts in 9s and 10s on these cards are so low. And here's one of the Frank Thomas rookies that I pulled, and it has the same problem. So you can see it. I don't know if that was it right there. So kind of right across his forehead, going diagonal up this way, you can see the line. I don't know if I'll be able to get the light right, but you can see the line where the score, there it is. You can see it there a little bit, right across his forehead, kind of going diagonal up over his right eye, like it gets closer to the bill of his hat. Like, that is, again, from the score trivia piece. It dug into the surface of the card because the packs were packed in so tight together for so long. So this card is also doesn't have a single shot at a 10. And Like, this is a card that I probably have 15 or maybe even 20 of, and I've out of all the packs, and I think I've bought a couple complete sets. Like, I've never gotten one of these cards that I think even has a shot at a 9. Every single one I have, or not a shot at a 9, sorry, a shot at a 10. Like, every single one of these I have is off-centered enough to where I don't think it will grade as a 10. So at some point, I'm just going to break down and buy this card in a 10. And you all know it's not an expensive card. So this card has a total pop of 2,751 in PSA 10s. Its total pop count is 11,098. So this has a 24% gem rate with PSA, so it's a little bit easier to get a 10 on than the Bo Jackson was. The Bo Jackson was 18%. But the price of a 10 is $35. So like, I could get this card graded with SGC, take a chance on it coming back as a 9, or I could just go out and buy a 10 for $35. So in this case, like, this card is cheap enough to where I would actually consider buying a 10 because it's not crazy expensive in a 10. Now, if it were $300 or $30, then I'm probably going to buy the 9 for $30. But this one is a cheap card. And a 9 is $11.20 right now in a PSA. Here are a couple cards that I pulled out of the Bowman Complete set. So this Griffey is a pretty sharp card, but it's off-centered a little bit. So I may review this and determine whether or not I think it will grade a 9, because I don't have this card graded, and I would consider sending it in just because of how much I collect and love Ken Griffey Jr. But you can see there's a ding on that edge right there. It's off-centered left to right. So this card may not grade as a 9 even. And I didn't write the pops or any of the information down for that one. Here's the Frank Thomas rookie that I was wanting to pull out of the box and didn't. So I bought the set. I'm hoping to get a nice Frank Thomas rookie, and you can tell this is off-centered left to right and top to bottom. This probably at best is an 8. So this is another card that at some point I will just break down and buy a 10 and probably pay $20 to $30 for a 10. But really the big one is the Michael Jordan SP1. So this overall is a pretty clean card. But as with so many in 1991 Upper Deck, this one is off-centered, and this card screams 8 to me. It's got some tiny touches on, I think it's this corner where you can see it just tips up at an angle very slightly. It's definitely not a pristine card. I'm happy to have it. I think it's amazing that I pulled the Bo Jackson out of a pack for the first time ever. And this is the only one of these that I've ever graded or ever owned. So I'm super happy to have it. I think this is probably an 8. It's off-centered left to right. As you can see, it might be a little bit thicker on the top than it is on the bottom border also. And then it's got a few minor touches on corners. And again, that screams 8 to me. So again, it's an awesome card. I'm happy to have it. I've never owned it before. So it's 10 count in PSA is 2,600, and I believe that's 87. It could be 97. I scribbled this down really quickly, so I'm not sure which one it is, but 2,600 and some change. The total graded number for PSA on that card is 26,723. So that card has been graded a whole lot. And so that gives it a 10.1% gem rate. So you could open a case of these and pull 10 or 15 of them, and maybe by the numbers be lucky enough to pull one that would grade a 10. Right now, the PSA 10 price of that card is $409, and a 9 is $40. Like, I could send this in hoping to get a 9 with SGC, but like I said, that card screams 8 to me. I haven't looked up the SGC 8 value of this card, but more than likely, when the time comes at some point, I would love to have a 10. I don't know if I want to justify paying $400 for that card in a 10. So that's not a complaint. Like, these are all great cards. I'm happy to have them. It's kind of to be expected when you're ripping this kind of product that was just way overproduced. And it's been sitting somewhere for what, 30 years, over 30 years. So it's, again, I'm not complaining because I enjoy ripping them. Like, that's why I buy them. Like, I like to rip packs, and that scratches the itch. But if you're grading them, or if you're ripping them just to grade, like, in some cases you might really get lucky, but more often than not, you're probably going to come out on the short end of it. And that's why, again, for me, when the time comes to get these cards in graded versions, it's probably just better to buy them. And again, I know I'm not telling any of you stuff that you don't already know. I just wanted to give you my firsthand experience based off of, what is it, 5 junk wax boxes and a complete set that I've ripped within the last month. And again, there are a handful of cards that I could send in and probably get some 10s on. You know, guys like Cal Ripken 89 Donruss, that Ricky Henderson I showed you, and now that I look at it again, it's probably not a 10. But, you know, those guys are later in their career, and they're Hall of Famers and they're great cards, no doubt. But those are the types of cards that you send in to get graded. If you grade a 10, if you get a 10, it's probably a $20 or $30 card. If it grades a 9, it's probably a $10 card at the most. And it's probably, at least to me, not worth the risk to get those types of cards graded unless I'm really, really certain that it's worst case scenario with SGC going to grade a 9.5, which again is a huge roll of the dice. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. And I love ripping junk wax boxes. I love sending cards in to get graded. I love pre-grading them myself and then comparing those grades to the cards when I get my grades back. I like to compare, my pre-grading with their actual grading and see how close I am. And I would like to think that I'm pretty good at it. For the most part, I'm usually within a grade. There are a couple times where, I missed major flaws in cards, like my 1960 Topps Stan Musial that I just gave to my buddy Doug, sports collector. I missed a crease in the corner. Greg Morris on eBay said it had a crease and it was a low grade card. But I looked at the pictures and I'm like, how is that a low grade card? I didn't see the crease. I got the card in hand, reviewed it, sent it to SGC. It came back a 3 and I was like, what? And that was pretty much my reaction, except for way louder probably and more shrill. But I got it back in a 3, and then I reviewed it more closely and then saw the wrinkle on the back side on one of the corners. And I was like, well, that's why it got a 3. Same thing with the 60 Al Kaline. There was a wrinkle in the top by his hat, maybe a 1/4 of an inch long, that you could see. And it went down from a BBG 5 or 5.5 to an SGC 3 or 3.5, I think. I can't remember, because that's another card that I've moved on from. So with vintage stuff, if you miss something and it comes back a grade or 2 lower, like, you're probably not going to be losing your shirt on a card like that. on a card like this, if I send this card in expecting to get a 9 and it comes back a 7 or a 6 or an 8 because I didn't see the surface issue from the score trivia piece on there, like, that's a $5 card if it comes back as a 7. You know what I mean? So what I will say is, if you're like me and you do love to rip junk wax boxes, then by all means buy them and rip them. Don't think that you're going to buy them and rip them pull 6 King Griffey Jr. 89 Donruss rookie cards out of a box that are going to be worth sending in to grade. Because more than likely, if you get something that's worth grading out of that box, a King Griffey Jr. rookie, it's probably going to be a 9 just based off of the percentage of 9s compared to 10s with the overall grading. So if you're going to rip them and you want to send them into grading, I'd look at them really, really closely before you spend $15 with SGC or 25 or 30 bucks, whatever it is, with PSA, because it's a big gamble with a lot of these cards. And if you're off by 1 grade, you're talking about a card that's not extremely valuable already. A Bo Jackson in a 10 goes from $212 to $35. Like, if you get a 9, you're going to be okay. In an 8 might be around the $15 card, so you may be able to get your money back if you grade it with SGC and get an 8 back. So again, it's a huge roll of the dice. I rip them because I enjoy it. If I get cards out that are nice enough to grade, then it's just a bonus. But again, don't buy them thinking you're going to get a bunch of 9s and 10s coming out of these boxes, because a whole lot of the times you're going to get 8s or worse. And again, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence. I know that this has been talked about before. I know that the vast majority of you are aware of that. But at the end of the day, if you're newer to collecting and you're newer to grading, like, just be very, very careful, especially since they have, anecdotally tightened up the grading standards and it's harder to get 10s on some of these cards. So it's Friday night as I'm filming this video. Hopefully I get it out tonight or tomorrow. Also, before I get off here, for those of you that are still with me, I really appreciate it. We had our meeting this morning for 7th grade girls basketball. Our practices start Monday. I think our first game is a couple weeks after that, like the first week in November. So it's really starting my busy time of the year, because we'll be in basketball until right before Christmas, and then I'll have a short break when I get back, and then baseball workouts are going to start. So I've been, doing some weeks 2 or 3 videos a week. I may not be able to keep up with that. But more importantly, I probably am not going to have as much time to watch videos. I will still watch and comment on videos as often as I can. And I watch a lot of videos and spend a lot of time on YouTube because I'm fortunate with my job that I can do that. But I will probably be losing a lot of that time in the evening to where I would normally also be watching YouTube videos while I've got a hockey game or something going on in the background. I'm going to lose a lot of that time. So if you don't see me watching as many of your videos, if you're on YouTube, or commenting on as many of your videos, please don't be offended. I still love you. I still think you're great guys. I still love your channel. It's a lot of these times that, a lot of these games, our bus will be leaving the school at 3 o'clock. We'll have a 45 minute or an hour long bus ride down to the other school or wherever we're going. We have 7th grade games. We'll start at usually 6, and then we'll have an 8th grade game, or maybe 5:30 for the 7th grade games. And then we'll have 8th grade games that start after that. And then we've got another hour-long bus ride back. So a lot of nights, I won't be getting back until 9 or 10 o'clock. And so some weeks we have 3 games a week. So again, not a complaint. I enjoy it. I signed up for it. I knew what I was getting into. But I just want to make sure that all my friends within the YouTube card community understand that I'm going to be pretty busy, at least up in or close to Christmas, and then I'll have a break, and then baseball is going to kick off. Because again, this time of year is just a blur. So I'll wake up at a blink of an eye, and it'll be the end of the school year, and it'll be summer again. So I just wanted to let you all know that if you're still with me, that I'm about to be really, really busy. But if you're still with me, again, I appreciate it. I crossed over 1,300 subscribers last week. Thanks again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all your support. I've noticed even some of my older videos are getting watched, and that's great. So thank you everyone for the support. If you're still with me and you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I will quit flapping my yap. So until the next one, I hope everybody has a good one, and I'll talk to you later.